Hi and welcome. This is going to be a quick primer on how I use landscaping materials when I do dioramas. It won't necessarily be a how-to, but I want to show you how I use Martin Welberg products on some of my dioramas, and it can be equally used on your layout. I plan to do that this summer with mine. So for this first one, we'll look at Shorty's Service Station by Railscale Models. And this was a kit that I built a few years ago. After I was finished building the structure, I knew what I wanted the diorama that I was going to make out of it to look like. So I measured the building and then cut a piece of foam core that had enough room for the building and the parking that I wanted on it. So I put some ground foam around the back and then put some gray paint down where I was going to put gravel in front for the gas pumps. Then I started applying Martin Welberg products to it. What I like about these, you can just tear a little piece off of the mat they come on. I dip it in a bit of white glue and then just stick it in place. And the key here is to have a variety of products that you can put on. I have maybe 9 or 10 different types of plants that they put out. And in nature, you usually have quite a variety. And that's the look that I'm always trying to go after. Now in a case like this, it would mostly be weeds that are just cropping up where they haven't really been taking care of it. So the next one we're going to look at is the Kingo Lighthouse. Now I had built this lighthouse a year or so before I finally got around to making a base for it. And I always knew I was going to make one for it. It was just a matter of deciding what I wanted it to look like. So I cut a piece of paper to the size that I wanted it. Then I used a cutter to make a frame for it. And I mitered the ends and then ended up gluing the frame together. Sometimes you can put a frame around a diorama, but it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to in this one to try it out. Then I cut a piece of pink foam that would fit inside the tray that I made. And I shaved the edges of it so it sloped down, and then drew where my lighthouse was going to fit. I went around the outside of it with Sculptamold to build up the landform a little bit. And being a lighthouse that was sitting on a coast, I wanted a bunch of rocks around it. So I took some of my rock molds and filled them with hydrocal and made some plaster rocks. Then it's a matter of picking how you want to color them. On these I wanted to use a variety of stains. Then I glued them in place on my base. And then it was time to start deciding where I wanted to put foliage. So I gathered together the products that I thought would go good on kind of a wind-swept coastline and started gluing them in place. And there was a couple of paths I was going to have to make. So for one of them, I was using AK rough terrain to make a dirt path coming from the side door. And I continued gluing more of my foliage products in place. I used a couple different glues in this because I was stuffing a lot of stuff in place. Sometimes the white glue won't hold it that well, so I used Gorilla Glue that's a little tackier. And then for the side path, I put some gravel down on top of the terrain. Then I went ahead and stained the wooden frame that I had built around this. And for the front door, I wanted to put down a gravel path. So I put down some glue where that was and just sprinkled some gravel on it. And again, this is supposed to show an area that's windswept and a lot of weeds, a lot of foliage that would hold up to rough weather. And again, you're always looking for the variety, because it's very rare in nature that you see all one kind of plant or one size of plant. unless you're in some place that's cultivated. And one of the reasons that I had wanted to build a base for this lighthouse was to show off the lighting and sound that I had added to it. This next one I'll show you is Britters Garage. It's from Carolina Craftsman Kits. This garage comes with its own concrete platform, but again I wanted a bigger base. So after I had built the structure and put it on its platform, I took a piece of foam core, painted it, and then I put the platform on it and marked all the way around that. Then I cut out the top level of the foam core so that the pad would actually sit down in it. Then I started using AK Terrain's asphalt. This was going to be as asphalt was leading up to the concrete pad. I had put in some strip wood so that I'd have a nice clean edge. Once it had dried, I pulled the strip wood out. And then my concrete pad fit in perfectly, so I painted around the back where it was going to be earth and foliage. Once I had the building in place, I started using some of the landscaping products. And while there wasn't a lot of area to landscape, I was going to fill it in with a variety of bushes and weeds that would be around back of a gas station that wasn't being tended to. And again, it's just a matter of picking the ones that you want, dipping them in a bit of glue, and then planting them in place. It doesn't take a lot of foliage to give that look. I also like to put a couple little weeds here and there in front where maybe they've grown up through cracks. And I know I've just been showing you how I use them on dioramas, but all of these techniques can be used around any building that you put on your layout. Even if you have your layout already landscaped, you can have weeds growing around buildings, growing up through concrete cracks. If you look even in urban settings, you'll find plenty of places where nature is trying to take over. Now for this last one, this is a diorama that I built out of two structures that I had already put together. I had built the bridge and the chapel. They were both kind of Wingo models, but I wanted to put them together on a large diorama that was really accentuating the nature that was around them. I had drawn out where my chapel and bridge were going to go, and I had a stream going through the back and a road in front. So I started painting my foam. And as you can see, this is a much thicker piece than usual because of the stream. And then I had dried out some dirt that I got from the backyard and sifted it into different grades. Then I put down some Mod Podge and sifted some of the dirt into place. And I used chalks to get darker areas in the stream bed. And then I filled some of the sides with AK Terrain, which when it's done will give a muddy look. Since I was going to pour a liquid epoxy in for the water, I had to seal both ends. And I used plastic and glue for that. And then I mixed up my Envirotex and I did multiple pours, letting each one cure after you pour it. And this keeps building up the level of my creek. And I'm happy to say that I didn't have any leaks on either end. but I did find that I had to raise the bridge some as the water level kept rising, but you've heard that old story. Then after I was done pouring the Envirotex, I used some Liquitex gloss medium to get some ripples in the water. And this is easy enough by just spreading it out and then using a tongue depressor to get some ripples. And then I was able to peel off the plastic, and I made a wooden frame that was going around it, so I glued it in all four sides. Now it was time to start putting all of the foliage in place. I already had a few trees that I knew I was going to use, a couple I had made and a couple I had bought. Then it was a matter of deciding where the foliage would be correct. You have to remember you have your understory that's under trees, and it's going to be different underneath the trees and in the shade than it will be out in the sun. And again, you want to get the same type of variety that nature loves to put in. And I was fortunate that I had quite a few materials to choose from. And I'd made a gravel road to go in front, and I had some headstones that I'd put alongside the chapel. But putting all of the landscaping and foliage in place was the most fun of this whole project. And it's really enjoyable, just picking little pieces and deciding where to place them. Pretty soon you've run out of diorama, and you wish that it was bigger so you could keep going. Anyway, I hope this gives you an idea of some of the fun you can have placing foliage, whether it's on a layout or a diorama. And I do really love working with Martin Welberg products, and no, I'm not sponsored by him. Thank you for watching.